"What is behind this door, Alora?" Evan asked, looking at the giant door in front of him. Alora didn't answer Evan's question and walked in front of the door, trying to open it. When Alora touched the giant door to open it, all the runes engraved on it lit up with bright light, and a threatening aura that sent a chill down Evan's spine filled the entire third floor. Feeling the chilling aura, Evan wanted to pull Alora away and escape, but before he could, the blood inside his body started moving faster and a crimson-red aura began to emanate from his body. As the crimson-red aura erupted from his body and made contact with the door, all the engraved runes that were shining returned to normal, and the threatening aura that filled the third floor disappeared. "What the fuck was that?" Evan muttered in a low voice while wiping the sweat from his forehead. Slowly, the crimson-red aura coming out of his body started to recede and his blood returned to normal. Evan looked at Alora, who was pushing the door open, and noticed she wasn't affected by the threatening aura that came out of the door. It might be a safety mechanism that activates when someone other than Alora enters the third floor. Evan thought inwardly as he looked at the little red-haired girl. But this protection mechanism deactivated after sensing the aura of my Doom-bringer bloodline. Evan was confused as to why the protective runes deactivated after sensing the aura of his bloodline, but his thoughts were interrupted when Alora finally opened the door. Boom! With a loud booming sound, the giant door was slammed open, and the moment it opened, a heavy stench of iron filled the air. The smell was so heavy that Evan had to cover his nose with his hands. After covering his nose, he glanced inside the room, but couldn't see anything because the entire room was covered in red mist. "Let's go, Father." Unlike Evan, Alora wasn't affected by the strong smell of blood and entered the room without hesitation. Evan wanted to stop Alora, but before he could, she already entered the room and disappeared inside the red mist. Seeing Alora enter, Evan didn't hesitate and took a step forward, entering the room as well. In order to avoid being distracted by the heavy stench of blood, he covered his face using world essence to filter the air. This red mist. Evan raised an eyebrow when the red mist covering the room came into contact with his body because, for some reason, his blood became excited when his body came into contact with the mist. "Where is Alora?" Evan tried to look for Alora, but because of the heavy red mist that was obstructing his vision, he couldn't find her. He attempted to use his spiritual senses to locate her but was stunned to find that the red mist was preventing his spiritual senses from spreading outwards, allowing him to sense only a 10-meter radius around him. "Alora," Evan called out loudly, hoping for a reply that would help him locate her through her voice. freewebnovel.com. "Father, come here." Evan glanced to his right, where he heard Alora's voice, and quickly walked in her direction. As Evan walked in the direction of the voice, the red mist around him began to thin, and a few seconds later, he finally escaped the area covered in red mist. "Father, over here." The moment he emerged from the red mist, he heard Alora's voice and saw her waving her hands towards him. "Don't run, Wit." Evan wanted to scold her for rushing into the room without listening to him, but his words got stuck inside his mouth when he noticed something behind Alora. "What the fuck is this?" Evan muttered with his eyes wide open as he looked at a small pool of blood behind Alora. Evan had witnessed many bloody scenes since the moment he was transmigrated to the Aurora world, so a small pool of blood which was only 5 meters in diameter wasn't enough to shock him. However, what left him astounded was the immense energy emanating from the small pool of blood. Rather than a pool of blood, I feel like I'm looking at an entire ocean filled with energy. Evan thought inwardly and activated his eyes of the abyss to clearly see the energy emanating from the pool. The moment Evan used the eyes of abyss, his vision changed and he saw a vast amount of bright golden energy inside the blood pool. This amount of energy, I am sure my body would explode if I entered inside this pool, Evan thought as he walked closer to the blood pool. As Evan approached the pool, he suddenly noticed something strange and a frown appeared on his face. It's not blood. Evan stopped some distance away from the pool and his eyes gleamed a little. Looking at the density of the red liquid inside the pool, he realized it was too dense to be called blood. Instead of blood, it looks like red syrup, he muttered in a low voice and used his eyes of abyss to their full power. Using the eyes of Abyss to their full power, Evan finally found what was the red thing inside the pool. It's not blood but the blood essence of a powerful creature, Evan muttered and guessed that the rank of the creature who left behind this blood essence must have been rank 5 or 6. The amount of energy inside this pool is so high that I might not be able to survive even for 5 seconds after entering, Evan said with a wry smile on his face and shook his head. Just when Evan was looking at the pool with a look of interest on his face, Alora walked near him and grabbed his hand. "What's wrong, Alora?" He raised an eyebrow when he saw Alora grabbing his hand. Alora smiled when she heard him and said something that sent a chill down his spine. "Go inside the pool, Father." As his blood calmed down, the amount of energy entering his body also decreased. Although the influx of energy lessened, Evan still felt that he could hold on for a few more minutes before reaching his limit because controlling his restless blood was harder than he thought. Around 2 minutes later, even with the help of the blood manipulation skill, Evan was at his limit. "I need to get out of here," he thought and was about to use the soul beacon to leave the pool, but just before he activated the soul beacon skill. Bang! A low booming sound came from his body, and a golden aura covered him. "I can't handle it anymore," Evan said inwardly and was about to leave the blood essence pond using the soul beacon skill to give his body some rest, but before he could leave. Boom! A low booming sound came from his body, and a golden aura covered him. "Your bloodline, Doombringer, is evolving." A notification flashed before his eyes, but Evan wasn't able to see it because the moment the golden aura appeared around him, the blood inside his body once again became restless, and even with the blood manipulation skill, he couldn't control it. Whoosh! The energy of the pond rushed inside his body even faster than before, and even though his blood absorbed most of the energy that entered his body, he still felt as if his body would explode at any moment. Evan tried to escape using the soul beacon skill, but to his shock, he found that because of the rampant energy rushing inside his body, he couldn't use his world essence or the primordial shadow energy. Fu K. Evan cursed inwardly, but he tried his best to maintain a composed look on the outside because he was afraid that if he showed any abnormal reaction, Alora would jump into the blood essence pool, and he wasn't sure if she would survive in the current situation where the pool was filled with rampant energy. Evan was very close to the edge of the pool, so in order to leave, he just needed to grab the edge and pull himself outside, but because of the chaotic situation of his blood, which was circulating inside his body even faster than a bullet train, almost all of the arteries and tissues in his body were destroyed and his body was literally useless. The only reason he was still alive and not feeling much pain was because of the vast amount of light dragon's energy entering his body from the blood essence pond. Evan tried to call his shadow undeads to come out of the shadow storage and pull him outside, but because of the vast amount of energy emitting from the pond, all the shadow undeads that he summoned exploded the moment they came out of shadow storage. Fu K, this is too much. Just when Evan felt he was about to reach his limit, the golden aura around him became even brighter. Your bloodline, Doombringer, successfully evolved to the second stage. The moment the notification appeared, the restless blood inside his body began to calm down. As the circulation speed of his blood decreased, the energy of the blood essence pond started to heal his body, which was almost completely destroyed from the inside. My blood is still greedily absorbing the energy from the pond, Evan said inwardly while panting heavily. He looked at the 2 notifications that he received about the evolution of his bloodline and raised an eyebrow. Second stage of the bloodline, he muttered and thought his bloodline might have been fully awakened from its partially awakened state. He wanted to look at the details of his bloodline, but his blood was still greedily absorbing the energy of the pond, which confused him. If my bloodline already evolved, then why is my blood still absorbing the energy from the pond? Evan muttered in a confused voice. Although the energy that his blood was absorbing was lower than before and it wasn't putting any burden on him, he still couldn't relax because of what happened earlier. The feeling of not being able to escape from the pond, even though his life was in danger, left a bad taste in his mouth. Suddenly, the golden aura that appeared around him after the evolution of his bloodline started to recede. At the same time, Evan noticed that instead of his blood, now the energy of the pond was being absorbed by his flesh, bones and other parts of his body. What is happening now? Evan muttered in a confused voice when the other parts of his body started to absorb the energy of the blood essence pond as well. Just when Evan was getting confused, a few more notifications flashed before his eyes. Because of the evolution of your bloodline, the syncretization between your race Eltern and the origin universe increased by 15%. Current syncretization between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 59.87%. The syncretization between your race and the origin universe reached over 50%. Due to the increase in syncretization, the curse effect of your Doom-bringer bloodline reduced slightly. What the hell is this syncretization sh*t? Evan asked in a baffled voice because other than the fact that the curse effect of his bloodline reduced slightly, he did not understand anything else. His body was still absorbing the energy from the pond, and Evan noticed that the amount of energy he absorbed till now was so high that the red color of the blood essence started to fade and it began to turn white. The huge amount of energy inside the blood essence pond, which was like a vast ocean a few minutes ago, reduced to a small pond, and even that small amount of energy was disappearing at an astonishing speed. As his blood absorbed more energy from the pond, Evan noticed the synchronization rate between his race, Eltern, and the origin universe was slowly increasing. Current syncretization between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 59.87. 59.88. 59.89. Seeing the syncretization rate was still increasing, Evan decided to stay inside the blood essence pond until its energy completely ran out. 59.94. 59.95. 59.96. Soon the syncretization rate reached 59.99%, and it was only a step away from reaching the 60% mark. A few seconds later, his blood finally absorbed the remaining amount of energy from the pool, and current syncretization rate between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 60%. The syncretization rate finally reached 60%. The moment the syncretization rate hit the 60% mark, thump, thump, his heart, which was covered in the outline of the rune of origin, started to beat widely, and a strange energy erupted from it. The syncretization between your race, Eltern, and the origin universe reached 60%. Thump, thump. As the notification flashed in front of Evan's eyes, his heart, which was covered in the outline of the rune of origin, started to beat widely. Because of the increased rate of syncretization between your race and the origin universe, your position as the holder of origin is further solidified. A small part of your ruler's authority has been unlocked. Closing parenthesis question mark. Ruler's authority passively increases your vitality by 100% permanently. A surge of power suddenly erupted from Evan's heart, which was beating widely, and he felt his vitality skyrocketing. From 150 points, his vitality instantly reached 300 points. Evan was shocked because of the sudden change in his body and didn't know how he should react. He really did not understand even a single thing that was happening. From the syncretization to the position of the holder of origin, he did not understand a single thing about them. On top of that, like these things were not enough, he even awakened a small part of something called ruler's authority. He couldn't see the name of this ruler's authority because of the worshipper of the question mark cult, but after reading the effect of this authority, only one word came into his mind. Broken. An authority that passively increases my vitality by 100%. Evan muttered with a blank look on his face and shook his head, thinking he was dreaming. It may seem like the effect of this authority wasn't a big deal, but it was only because of the fact that Evan's current base vitality was at 150 points. But what about the future when he breaks through the next rank? For example, if after breaking through the next rank, Evan's base vitality reaches 700 points, this vitality will instantly be doubled under the effect of his ruler's authority and will reach 1400 points. In simple words, the effect of his ruler's authority was completely broken. And this is just a small part of the ruler's authority that unlocked because of the increased rate of syncretization between my race, Eltern, and the so-called origin universe. Evan muttered in a low voice and took a deep breath. He once again read the notifications that he just received and rubbed his chin with a thoughtful look on his face. I really can't understand anything, but from the looks of it, I think all of these syncretization, holder of origin, and ruler's authority things are related to my bloodline and the race. Evan said to himself and sighed loudly because even though it's been a few months since he arrived in Utopia, he still couldn't find any information regarding the Eltern race. He read many books related to the races of Utopia in the hidden world of the Dryads, but in those books, there was no information regarding Elterns. Forget about information in the books, even a person like Sylvan who has been alive for who knows how many years never heard anything about the Eltern. Not only about the Eltern, I didn't find any information about the Heart of Origin as well. Evan muttered as he placed one of his hands on his heart, which was slowly calming down after releasing the energy that increased his vitality by 100%. Father, are you alright? Suddenly, Evan heard Elora's concerned voice and saw her looking at him from a distance. Seeing her concerned look, he nodded his head with a forced smile. I'm fine, sweetie. After saying this, he turned his head and looked at the blood essence pool and saw that almost all of its energy was absorbed by him. Because of the loss of energy, even the color of the blood essence turned white, and now it was looking like normal water. Looking at the pool, which looked like it was filled with milk, Evan sighed and decided to get out first before checking the changes that happened with his bloodline and race. His body, which was destroyed from inside because of his uncontrollable blood, had already recovered because of the pool's energy. As Evan left the pool and came out, he noticed that after he absorbed the blood essence, the red mist that covered the entire room was slowly disappearing. Father. Seeing Evan coming out of the pool, Elora rushed towards him. It was very comfortable inside the pool, right? She asked with a look that was saying, praise me for bringing you here. Well, it was not practically comfortable, but the benefit that this blood essence pool brought to me is not something that I can deny. Evan said inwardly as he thought about the effect of the ruler's authority that he awakened. He looked at Elora and seeing her hopeful look, he smiled slightly and patted her head. It was very comfortable. Thank you for bringing me here, Elora. He. Hearing Evan, the red-haired girl smiled with a smug look on her face and nodded her head. Evan couldn't help but laugh when he saw her smiling with a smug look and shook his head. I think I should stop worrying about the things that I can't control and should enjoy my present. Evan thought inwardly, and the anxiety he was feeling because of not being able to understand anything about the notification he received earlier decreased. freewebnovel.com. He looked around at the red mist, which was slowly disappearing, and guessed that the room would be free of mist in less than 10 minutes. While the mist is decreasing, let me check what happened to my bloodline. Evan thought and sat down on the ground. As he sat down, Elora came near him and sat on his lap. Evan didn't say anything when Elora sat on his lap and opened his status window. After opening his status window, he was planning to look at the details of his bloodline first, but before he could do so, something in his title section caught his attention, and his eyes opened wide in shock. False progenitor. A.N. The ruler's authority increases endurance by 100%. In the last chapter, I mistakenly wrote vitality instead of endurance. Sorry for the inconvenience. False progenitor. Seeing a new title in his title section, Evan raised an eyebrow in surprise. He focused his gaze on the title and its details appeared in front of his eyes. False progenitor. A title given to those who are one of their kind in the entire Origin universe and are progressing towards becoming a new progenitor. Evan read the details of his new title and a deep frown appeared on his face. A title given to those who are one of their kind. He muttered, and a light of understanding shone in his eyes. So the reason I never found any information about the Eltern race is because there is no Eltern in this entire world besides me. It would be a lie to say Evan wasn't surprised after reading the details of the false progenitor title, but when he thought about the things that he saw in the hut a few days ago, he realized it was quite obvious that there were no other Eltern in this world. What a mess, he said to himself and looked at the effect of the title. Effect of the false progenitor title. Increases your intelligence stat by 10% and provides a passive mind shield ability that decreases the effect of any spiritual type skill aimed against you by 20%. False progenitor title can be evolved into true progenitor title by increasing the synchronization rate between your race and the origin universe to 100%. The effect of the title is way better than I thought considering it can be evolved to a higher level. Evan said, looking at his intelligence stat, which increased by 15 and reached 165 points under the effect of the false progenitor title. Although the increase in the intelligence stat was very attractive, the thing that caught his attention was the mind shield ability that could decrease the effect of all spiritual type skills aimed against him by 20%. There is nothing in the details of this title that says this mind shield ability will be affected by the attacker's rank, which means even the spiritual attacks of rank 6 core evolvers will be affected by this ability. Evan said with a smile on his face and nodded his head. His spiritual power was already way higher than his core's rank, and now with this 20% shielding ability, he was sure that even without using shadow possession or any other skills, he could withstand the spiritual attacks of normal mid-level rank 2 core evolvers. 100% synchronization, huh? He looked at the requirement he needed to fulfill to evolve the false progenitor title and felt lost for a moment. Just a few minutes ago, he didn't even know there was something like synchronization, so it is quite obvious that he had no idea about how to increase its progression rate. Do I need to absorb more blood essence of a light dragon to increase the synchronization rate? He muttered with a thoughtful look on his face but wasn't sure if this would work or not. But even if this method can increase the synchronization rate between his race and the origin universe, Evan knew that it wouldn't be easy to find an opportunity similar to this. He just absorbed the blood essence of a rank 6 light dragon, and if he wants to do the same thing again, he will have to wait until he can kill a rank 6 dragon. Well, whatever. I will think about it in the future when I meet another light dragon, he thought to himself and looked at the details of his bloodline. Current effects of the Doombringer bloodline, partially awakened, the power of all shadow type skills is increased by 20%. All of your attack type skills will now carry the essence of the Doombringer bloodline and will have a 0.5% chance of triggering an instant death effect regardless of your target's rank. Due to the second stage of awakening, now you can use the life steal ability on any living being. Because of the curse of the Doombringer bloodline, your luck is reduced by 8%. Evan looked at the details of his bloodline and a deep frown appeared on his face. It is still partially awakened, he muttered in a low voice, because when his bloodline evolved to the second stage earlier, he thought it was fully awakened, but looking at the status window, he realized it was still partially awakened. Although his bloodline was still partially awakened, some things still changed about it. The probability of triggering the instant death effect rose to 0.5% from the previous 0.1%, and the 10% reduction in luck is reduced to 8%. He noted the improvement in the previous effects, but what caught his attention was definitely the newly awakened ability of his bloodline. Life steal ability on any living being. He thought inwardly but wasn't sure about the effect of this skill. He wanted to test it, but other than Alora and him, there was no living being inside the room, so he couldn't test it for now. I will test it after leaving the dragon statue, Evan said, and looked at the details of his race to see if there was any change in it, but just like before, there were no details about the Eltern race. Race. Eltern current synchronization rate between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 60%. He tried to focus his gaze on the race section of his status window, but there was still no information about the Eltern. Do I need to reach a 100% synchronization rate before it will show me details about it? Evan muttered with a thoughtful look on his face and sighed lightly. freewebnovel.com. Although he was annoyed by the fact that he didn't have any information about the Elterns that might help him increase the synchronization rate further, he knew he couldn't do anything about it for the time being. Well, whatever. It's not like I won't get any opportunity to find out more about the Elterns in the future, Evan said with a shake of his head and stopped thinking about it. Name: Evan. Race: Eltern. Current synchronization rate between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 60%. Rank: peak of rank 1. Bloodline: Doombringer partially awakened, 2nd stage. Strength 150. Agility 150. Endurance 150 plus 150. World Essence 150. Stamina 150. Intelligence 150 plus 15. Primordial Shadow Energy 150. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of Void 24.20%. Bound Flame, Prismatic Fire. Skills: Shadow Walk, Shadow Storage, Dimensional Shadow Bullet, Ice Chains, Wind Manipulation, Mind Suppression, Shadow Shrouding Wings, Temporal Velocity, Energy Devouring, Thunder Tempest, Flicker Step, Ember Vitality, Regeneration, Mid-Level Poison Resistance, Death Ring, Ice Spear, Wind Walk, Summon Lich, Soul Beacon, Soul Severance, Fireball, Blinding Light, Lightning Arrow, Gaze of Monarch, Psychic Soul Realm, Shadow Mark, Abyssal Vortex, Skyfall. Physique: Shadow Monarch Physique. Title: Rule Breaker, Creator of the Primordial Shadow Realm, the Cursed One, Owner of the Eldoria City, False Progenitor. Class: Shadow Necromancer. Class Skills: Shadow Resurrection, Shadow Save, Shadow Senses, Shadow Possession, Shadow Nails, Death Transfer, Growth Link, Soul Absorption, Soul Fusion, Shadow Clone, Shadow World. Racial Skill: Reaper's Wrath. Authorities: Master of Shadows, Death Guardian. Ruler's Authority. Evan looked at his status window and seeing his endurance and intelligence stats, which increased because of the Ruler's Authority and False Progenitor title, he nodded his head in satisfaction. The only thing that I don't understand is the question marks in my name section, he said with a confused look on his face, staring at the question marks beside his name. After reaching the peak of rank 1, these question marks suddenly appeared in his name section. There are just too many unknown things happening with me, he said with a shake of his head and closed the status window with a sigh. freewebnovel.com. After closing the status window, he looked around the room and saw the red mist that had covered the entire room had already thinned out to the point where it couldn't obstruct his vision anymore. This room is bigger than I expected, Evan said to himself while looking around. The entire room was around 5 times 5 kilometers square in size, and other than the blood essence pool, which was now useless, there were many other interesting things there. What is that? Suddenly, Evan noticed something not far away from him. He picked up Alora from his lap and walked towards the thing he had just noticed. After a few seconds, he stopped in front of a small platform covered in dust. Using his wind manipulation skill, he created a gust of wind and blew away all the dust that covered the platform. The moment the dust was blown away by the gust of wind, around 20 shining scales appeared in front of him. Dragon scales, Evan said with a surprised look on his face and picked one of the scales from the platform. The scale was golden in color and was around 20 centimeters in size. Scale of a mid-level rank 6 light dragon. As expected, these are the scales of a rank 6 dragon, Evan said in a low voice while looking at the scales with a thoughtful look on his face. These scales are enough to create a good armor for me, he said after thinking for a while as he remembered the rank 6 core that he found on the 2nd floor. Maybe, I can even use that core in the armor to create something incredible. Evan picked up all the dragon scales from the platform and threw them inside his shadow storage. He did not have much knowledge about artifact creation, so he decided to ask Octavius about it later on. After placing the scales inside his shadow storage, he once again looked around and soon found a deep red-colored grass growing not far away from the platform. He walked towards the grass and, upon coming closer to it, he smelled an intense scent of blood. There were around 10 stalks of grass, so he plucked one of them and looked at its details. Blood essence grass, a rare herb that only grows in areas abundant with rich blood essence. When consumed, this grass can fully restore the blood essence of any individual below rank 5. Evan was stunned after reading the details of the blood essence grass and looked at it with a surprised expression. With these stalks of grass, I can use the blood bullet skill even if my death transfer skill is on cooldown. The blood bullet skill of Carnage requires Evan to use his blood essence. Although this skill is very powerful, especially when combined with his Doombringer bloodline, the side effect of this skill is also quite severe. The only reason he was never bothered by this skill was because of death transfer, which can restore his blood essence even if he sacrificed it to create a blood bullet. But with these stalks of grass, he can now use the blood bullet skill even in situations where the death transfer skill is on cooldown. This grass must have grown here because of that blood essence pool, Evan said to himself and placed all the blood essence grass inside his shadow storage. After putting away the grass, he searched around the room for a few more minutes. After a few minutes, Evan searched the entire room and found only one thing. So this is the only thing left here, huh? He muttered while holding a nearly 2-meter-long bone in his hands. A small part of the leg bone of a rank 6 light dragon. Evan looked at the details of the bone and swung it around for a few seconds, generating powerful gusts of wind. Although I am not certain, I feel like this leg bone is even more powerful than a normal rank 3 artifact, Evan muttered after swinging the bone for a few seconds. He looked around the room one last time and, after seeing there was nothing left, he looked at Alora, who was standing beside him and started to walk towards the exit. Let's go, Alora, there's nothing left for us to do here. Roar. Seeing a beginner-level rank 3 monster coming towards it, the scorpion roared angrily, trying to warn Biscuit to stay away. But Biscuit completely ignored the scorpion's roar and soon appeared above its head. When Biscuit appeared above the scorpion's head, the monster noticed Alora's presence, who was sitting on top of the bird, and became confused for a moment. But it didn't get time to think about the small girl because the shadow undeads once again started to attack it. The scorpion was irritated because of the continuous attacks of the shadow undeads and, on top of that, it was almost out of energy. Screech. Suddenly, the scorpion heard a loud screech from above and saw the rank 3 bird was also preparing to attack it. Noticing the bird also wanted to attack it, the scorpion immediately sent a powerful wave of attack towards the shadow undeads, pushing them backwards. At the same time, it opened its mouth and a green energy ball started to form inside it. The scorpion raised its head and aimed the energy ball towards the flying bird. Just when the monster was about to shoot the energy ball, the space in front of it rippled, and the next second, Evan appeared there holding a giant bone covered in primordial shadow energy. No horny, Scorpio, he shouted loudly, and before the monster could react. Boom, he smashed the bone right at the top of its head. For a moment, time seemed to stop flowing when the light dragon's bone came into contact with the scorpion's head. But this strange phenomenon didn't last long because a split second later. Boom. A massive explosion rocked the surrounding area as the ground within more than 100 kilometers of the area collapsed and sank as if a tsunami had swallowed it. The distant mountains trembled under the impact of the shockwaves and turned into dust. Roar. Amid the chaos, a painful roar echoed within hundreds of kilometers, and a stream of blood erupted from the cracked head of the rank 3 scorpion, dyeing the ground around it deep red. Although the scorpion was completely exhausted and was in a weakened state after fighting for 3 days without any rest, it was still a mid-level rank 3 monster, so even though Evan's attack was very powerful, it was still not enough to kill it. The scorpion was in a lot of pain, but it still tried to stand up so that it could get away from there, but unfortunately for it. Boom. Before it could stand up, Evan struck the scorpion again using the light dragon's bone, which was coated in primordial shadow energy. Roar. The scorpion roared in pain upon being struck by the powerful bone, but Evan wasn't affected by its painful scream and boom, boom. Continuous explosions rocked the surrounding area, completely changing the landscape in a matter of seconds. Boom. Around 10 seconds later, Evan struck the scorpion's head for the 15th time, and with that attack, its life force finally disappeared. Seeing the scorpion was finally dead, Evan wiped imaginary sweat from his forehead and muttered in a low voice. What a tough guy. He put the light dragon's bone back inside his shadow storage and looked at the scorpion, whose head had turned into a meat paste, and felt he might have been too cruel to this guy. Woo, father is super fierce. Evan suddenly heard Alora's excited voice, and his eyes shook. He looked up and saw Alora looking at him from the top of Biscuit's back. Damn, the gentle image that I built in front of her is completely destroyed because of this bastard. He muttered in a low voice and kicked the scorpion with an irritated look on his face. Soon, Biscuit landed in front of him and Evan noticed Alora looking at him with shining eyes. Why is she looking at me with shining eyes? Evan thought with twitching eyes. Don't tell me she thinks beating someone into a pulp using a bone is a cool thing. Evan suddenly remembered the saying that children learn from their parents, and he felt in the future, he would have to think twice before doing anything in front of Alora. He took a deep breath and put the rank 3 scorpion into his shadow storage. Then he jumped onto Biscuit's back. At the same time, he used Shadow World to cover a large patch of ground, and using the Shadow World as a medium, he immediately sucked all of his Shadow Undead and Nihilus into his shadow storage. After summoning back all of his Shadow Undead, Evan nodded his head and patted Biscuit's head. freewebnovel.com. Let's go, Biscuit, it is time to collect our reward. Hearing Evan, Biscuit flapped its wings and immediately shot forward. In just a few seconds, it arrived near a mountain range and landed in front of a natural cave. Evan looked at the map in his hand and, after confirming that he was at the right location, he jumped down from Biscuit's back. Time liquid, huh, he muttered in a low voice and walked towards the cave while holding Alora's hand. I hope I will find at least 2 drops of the time liquid here. In the world domain, Evan had received a broken time watch from one of the 4 great clans. Chap 677, Broken Time Watch, rank 1 low grade, once a highly ranked artifact, but was damaged for unknown reasons and fell to the lowest level of rank 1. Using this artifact, you can slow down the flow of time within an area of 2 meters around you. Due to its broken condition, this artifact can be used only once a week for 2 hours. The current time difference ratio after activating the time watch is 1:2. Note: the ability of the Broken Time Watch can be enhanced by repairing it. Although the Time Watch was a very rare artifact that could affect the flow of time, Evan never used it because its current effect was not much help to him. But even though it is not helpful to him for now, Evan knows that by increasing the watch's rank, he can turn it into a very powerful artifact. For Evan, it was impossible to repair the Broken Time Watch using normal means, as he didn't know any good artifact refiner. Even in the closed world of Drades, there were no high-level artifact refiners. So the only way he could think of to repair the Broken Time Watch was to connect it with the Rune of Evolution and use it to increase its rank. I hope whoever placed this time liquid here was generous enough and left 2 drops for me. Evan muttered in a low voice and entered the cave with Alora. The moment Evan entered the cave, for a brief instant, he felt as if time had stopped flowing, but the next second, this strange sensation disappeared and everything returned to normal. Weird, Evan said to himself and walked deeper into the cave. As he walked deeper, he occasionally felt that time was flowing very fast and at other times, very slow. This strange phenomenon must be related to the time liquid. Evan muttered and looked at Alora, who seemed completely oblivious to the strange flow of time. Around 10 minutes later, Evan noticed a wide open area deeper in the cave. As they reached the wide open area, Evan saw a small hole at the top of the cave ceiling, and from the hole, the bright light of the stars that covered the sky of the first layer was entering the cave. Evan followed the path of the starlight and saw it landing on a small platform, illuminating a rock bowl placed on top of it. Seeing the rock bowl, Evan gulped his saliva and walked towards it, hoping to see at least 2 drops of time liquid inside it. Evan walked towards the small platform and stopped in front of the stone bowl. The bright light of the stars was shining right on top of the bowl, making it look like the most important thing present inside the cave. After stopping in front of the bowl, Evan took a deep breath and finally looked down, hoping to see at least 2 drops of time liquid. But the moment he lowered his head and his eyes landed on the bowl, his body stiffened and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. "What the fuck?" he said while looking at the stone bowl that was half filled with milk-white liquid. If he converted the liquid inside the bowl into drops, it would be more than 200 drops. Is this thing really time liquid? he said with a speechless look on his face and picked up the bowl from the stone platform. The moment Evan's hand touched the bowl, he felt the flow of time around him become completely disordered. The milk-white liquid that filled the bowl released a hazy energy, and he felt as if his body was aging at a rapid speed. Evan frowned when he felt his body aging rapidly and covered himself in Elora with the primordial shadow energy. The moment he covered himself with the primordial shadow energy, the effect of the time liquid on his body stopped, but the flow of time around him was still in complete disarray. Sometimes he felt time was flowing very fast, as if days passed in the blink of an eye, and other times he felt as if 1 second was longer than a year. It was a very strange feeling, and Evan couldn't properly explain it. "Are you fine, Elora?" he asked Elora, who seemed unaffected by the time liquid. Hearing Evan, Elora looked at him in confusion and tilted her head cutely as if asking, "What are you talking about?" "It looks like the time liquid is not affecting her," Evan thought with a deep look on his face. Is it because she didn't touch the time liquid, or are her senses so dull that she didn't realize anything? Evan was confused by Elora's abnormal condition. She had told him that she often fought against the monsters who tried to enter the Pillar of Light, so considering she fought against monsters for who knows how many years, her senses should be sharp enough to sense the disturbance that the time liquid was causing around them. But from her expression, he could tell that she was completely clueless about the disturbance caused by the time liquid. freewebnovel.com. Maybe she might have sensed the disturbance caused by the time liquid, but she just doesn't care about it. Evan thought to himself and shook his head. He looked at the stone bowl in his hand that was still releasing hazy energy that affected the flow of time around him, and the details of the time liquid appeared in front of his eyes. Time liquid. An extremely rare liquid that appears only in places affected by the law of time. Evan, that's it, he shouted inside his mind. What's with this half-assed information? At least tell me some of its uses. Evan felt like beating the person responsible for showing the details of the time liquid because there was literally no information there. If the status window didn't tell me time liquid only appears in places affected by the law of time, I would have thought it was sold by the fisherman in the fish market, Evan said in a sarcastic tone and shook his head. He took some deep breaths to calm down and asked Octavius, "Old man, do you know the uses of time liquid?" "Well, time liquid is quite rare, and you can use it in many ways. For example, you can use a drop of time liquid to instantly grow a herb that normally takes a few hundred or even 1,000 years to fully mature, or you can use it in a formation that can affect the flow of time. Though, this kind of formation will consume a large amount of time liquid because affecting the flow of time is not an easy thing." Octavius told Evan a few more uses of time liquid, like creating potions or pills with it that can reverse the age of people and make them young once again or do the complete opposite. Evan carefully listened to Octavius and had to admit that he could use the time liquid in many ways. "It's better than I thought," he said inwardly and nodded his head. He took out a small bronze-colored broken pocket watch from his shadow storage and placed it on the ground. "Let's see what kind of surprise this thing will give me," he muttered and looked at the materials he needed to evolve the broken time watch. You need the following materials to evolve the broken time watch. 1. 5 mid-level rank 1 monster cores. 2. 10 grams of arcanite. 3. 1 space stone. 4. 2 drops of time water. Evan took out all the materials that he needed to evolve the watch from his shadow storage and placed them beside the bronze-colored artifact along with 2 drops of time liquid. Detected all the required materials for the evolution of the broken time watch. Do you want to evolve the broken time watch to a mid-level rank 1 artifact? Yes, no. Evan looked at the notifications in front of him and chose yes without hesitation. The broken time watch is evolving into a mid-level rank 1 artifact. The moment he chose yes, a notification flashed in front of his eyes, the rune of evolution engraved on his chest lit up, and all the materials he placed near the broken time watch started to merge with it. As the materials merged with the watch, the small cracks all over the watch's frame started to disappear. Seeing the cracks that covered the frame of the broken time watch disappear, Evan smiled slightly and nodded his head. Elora stood beside Evan and also looked at the watch with curious eyes because she could tell that her father was quite excited while looking at the watch. Around half an hour later, the broken time watch suddenly released a bright bronze-colored light and returned to normal. At the same time, a notification flashed in front of Evan's eyes. Broken time watch successfully evolved into a mid-level rank 1 artifact, Time Watch. Time Watch rank 1 mid-level, once a highly ranked artifact, it was damaged for unknown reasons and fell to the lowest level of rank 1. But now, under the effect of the Rune of Evolution, this artifact is once again moving towards its former glory. Using the Time Watch, you can slow down the flow of time within an area of 10 meters around you. Due to its low level, this artifact can be used only once a week for 2 hours. The current time difference ratio after activating the Time Watch is 1:10. Evan looked at the details of the Time Watch and frowned. Although after the evolution, the time difference ratio increased by 5 times along with the affected area, he could still use it only once a week for 2 hours, which was not very useful to him. He was hoping to reduce the cooldown time of the watch to once a day and increase the time limit of 2 hours to even longer. Just when Evan was feeling disappointed because of the evolution, a notification flashed before his eyes that made him dumbfounded. Detected the required material for the evolution of the Time Watch. Do you want to evolve the Time Watch to a high-level rank 1 artifact? Yes, no. What the? Evan was stunned looking at the notification in front of him and tried to understand what was happening. Suddenly, something clicked in his mind and he looked at the materials needed to evolve the Time Watch. You need the following material to evolve the Time Watch. 1. 5 drops of time liquid. Evan looked at the status window in front of him with a blank look on his face and felt dumbfounded for a moment. Just 5 drops of time liquid. He muttered in a low voice, feeling stunned that he needed only 5 drops of time liquid and nothing else to evolve the Time Watch. Is this some kind of joke? He thought to himself, but looking at the notification floating in front of him, he knew it was true. He took a deep breath to calm down his emotions and looked at the small bowl of time liquid in his hands. Although I have more than 200 drops, I don't want to use them rashly, he said to himself while thinking deeply. After a minute of deep consideration, Evan sighed lightly and finally made up his mind. I hope I won't regret evolving this watch, he said and chose yes. The Time Watch is evolving into a high-level rank 1 artifact. Do you want to evolve the Time Watch into a high-level rank 1 artifact? Yes, no. Looking at the notification in front of him, Evan chose yes, and 5 drops of time liquid flew out of the bowl he was holding. As the 5 drops of time liquid merged with the Time Watch, the Rune of Evolution engraved on his chest lit up once again and the bronze-colored watch flashed with a bright light. Time Watch is evolving into a high-level rank 1 artifact. While the Time Watch was evolving, Evan carefully placed the bowl of the time liquid inside his shadow storage. The moment he placed the bowl inside his shadow storage, the disordered time flow inside the cave returned to normal. Evan sighed in relief when the time flow around him returned to normal as the disturbance caused by the time liquid was very uncomfortable. Along with Elora, he waited for the Time Watch to finish its evolution. Because the level of evolution was higher than before, it took the Time Watch around 2 hours to complete its evolution. As the evolution of the Time Watch finished, the small watch released a deep bronze-colored light and for a split second, the flow of time inside the cave once again became unstable. However, the instability didn't last long and soon returned to normal. The Time Watch also stopped releasing the bronze-colored light, and a notification flashed in front of Evan's eyes. Time Watch successfully evolved into a high-level rank 1 artifact. Bird coming towards them, but upon feeling its aura, a deep frown appeared on his face. Its strength is a little higher than before, Evan thought, noticing that Biscuit's power had increased a bit in the 3 hours he had spent inside the cave. Wait a second. Suddenly, a thought came into Evan's mind and his expression changed. Biscuit, how long was I inside the cave? He asked the black bird using the soul essence. Hearing Evan's voice inside its head, Biscuit didn't answer immediately and first landed in front of him. After landing, It also used the soul essence to answer his question. You were inside for around 28 days. 28 days. Evan shouted with a stunned look on his face and glanced at the cave behind him. Damn, I knew the time liquid was messing with the flow of time inside the cave, but to think 28 days passed while I was in there for less than 3 hours. He thought inwardly while rubbing his eyebrows. Now I don't even have 20 days before the tomb closes. Evan said with a sigh, feeling a headache coming on. He took out the map of the tomb from his shadow storage and saw it would take him around 7 days to reach the central area of the first layer of the tomb, and this time would increase even more if he encountered high-level monsters along the way. What a pain, he muttered in an annoyed voice and put the map back inside his shadow storage. After putting away the map, he took a deep breath to calm down and thought about his next move. After a few minutes of deep thinking, he finally made up his mind and sat down on the ground while holding the time watch in his hands. Let's reach the 25% mark first, and I will create my domain while moving towards the central area of the first layer, he said, and released his shadow undeads from his shadow storage. From Elora's explanation, he knew that there were many monsters around the Pillar of Light, and it would be very difficult for him to approach it. In order to enter the Pillar of Light, he would have to sneak past many monsters and it would definitely consume a lot of time. Previously, he was confident that with enough planning and using his shadow undeads as a distraction, he would be able to enter the Pillar of Light. But now that he had suddenly lost 28 days and didn't even have a full month left, he needed to change his plans. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to reach the central area of the first layer before the tomb closed. Create my domain, increase my powers even further, and if possible, evolve my domain into a zone so that I can become a beginner level rank 2 core evolver before the tomb closes. Evan thought inwardly with a sharp light flashing in his eyes as he considered a few things that could help him achieve his desired result. Although difficult, it is not impossible, he said, and looked at the thousands of shadow undeads around him. If I reach beginner level rank 2, I will be able to create peak rank 2 shadow undeads, and with their help, it won't be hard to reach the Pillar of Light, he thought while taking a deep breath and holding the time watch in his hands with a determined look. Spread out and don't let anyone disturb me, he ordered his shadow undeads, and all of them instantly spread throughout the area. Once his shadow undeads were spread out, Evan looked at the little red-haired girl beside him. Elora, do you want to stay here or play with your Uncle Biscuit? I will stay with you, father, Elora said without hesitation and sat beside him. Evan smiled upon hearing Elora and patted her head. If you feel bored, you can go and play with Uncle Biscuit, all right? Hearing Evan, Elora nodded her head and closed her eyes, enjoying the pats like a cat. Seeing her happy expression, Evan's eyes softened and he took a deep breath. If I want to take Elora with me out of the Tomb of the Ancient, I need to go inside that Pillar of Light no matter what. The Tomb of the Ancient opens for 3 months, once every 10 years. After the period of 3 months ends, the tomb will teleport every single person who entered it to the outside world. Evan will also be sent back to the closed world of Drades, but Elora is an exception. She has been living inside the tomb for who knows how many years, and unlike other people, she wouldn't be sent out of the tomb. Although Evan wasn't sure what his real relationship with Elora and the Pillar of Light located in the center of the first layer was, he had a feeling that if he wanted to take her outside of the tomb with him, he would have to go there. The strange connection my soul felt with Elora when she released that blackish-red aura and the reaction of the Pillar of Light at that time. Evan thought about the time he first met Elora, and suddenly a strange thought came to his mind. I hope I am just overthinking and it's not true, he said inwardly and shook his head to clear his mind. He looked at the time watch in his hand and, after taking a deep breath, activated it. The moment he activated the time watch, a blob of transparent white energy came out of the small watch and covered an area of 20 meters around him. Evan tried to sense the difference between the flow of time inside the field created by the time watch using his spiritual senses, but found it was not easy to understand what was happening as he wasn't proficient in the conceptual energy of time. Well, whatever, I should just focus on increasing my understanding of the void energy for the time being, he said to himself, and used the void study skill of the boots of Voidgazer along with the second void skill that he comprehended, void senses. Time continued to move, and soon, 3.5 hours passed for Biscuit and his shadow undeads who were guarding the surroundings. Although only 3.5 hours passed for Biscuit and the shadow undeads, for Evan it had been almost 3 days. Suddenly, Evan, who was sitting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes, which were flashing with deep purple-colored void energy, and 2 notifications flashed before him. Your understanding of void energy reached 25%. You can't increase your understanding of void energy anymore before you create a domain. So, can we go now? Eldracar asked in an annoyed voice as he looked at the tall, red-skinned, 2-horned demon in front of him. Don't look at me like that. I needed to finish a few things regarding our operation against the Shadow Realm. Baphomet said in a light voice while completely ignoring Eldracar's annoyed look. You should have prepared those things earlier or after coming back from the tomb. Now, because of you, we won't even get a full month to explore it, Eldracar said with a sigh and shook his head. You are overreacting. We have enough time to explore it, Baphomet said while waving his hand dismissively and stood up. Hearing Baphomet, Eldracar sighed once again and stood up as well. The void energy inside his body moved and he looked at Baphomet. Don't resist, the void dragon said and covered Baphomet in his void energy. Baphomet didn't resist the energy covering his body and just looked on calmly. Once Baphomet was enveloped in void energy, Eldracar took a step forward and they both disappeared. Millions of kilometers away from their previous position, Baphomet and Eldracar suddenly appeared above a lush forest. But Eldracar didn't stop there, he took another step forward, disappearing with Baphomet once again. Using his mastery over void energy, Eldracar moved towards the portal of the Tomb of the Ancient with Baphomet. His moving speed is as ridiculous as ever. Baphomet thought inwardly and shook his head. By the way, is there a special reason you decided to attack the Shadow Realm? Eldracar suddenly asked while moving towards the Tomb of the Ancient. Baphomet raised an eyebrow hearing Eldracar and said in an amused voice. Don't you already know the reason? You are even sending some dragons to take part in the attack because of that, right? Eldracar shook his head and said in a plain voice, although I know the main reason, I always felt there is something that you are hiding from me. The only reason I am helping you despite knowing this is because of the soul contract between us that forbids you to harm me or my people in any way. Baphomet wasn't surprised when he heard Eldracar and said in a calm voice. Well, you are not wrong. I do have another reason for attacking the Shadow Realm. Hearing Baphomet admit that he had another reason to attack the Shadow Realm, Eldracar looked at him with narrowed eyes. Seeing Eldracar was looking at him with narrowed eyes, Baphomet just laughed and waved his hand. Don't worry, it's not going to affect our plans in any way. freewebnovel.com. Eldracar looked at the red-skinned demon for a few seconds before he once again started moving towards the Shadow Realm. Baphomet smiled when Eldracar didn't press for more information and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. I don't know if my guess is right or not, but if it is, there's a big chance I will be able to lure out that rat. He thought, recalling the information he received from one of his essence clones that was destroyed in a lower world. Even the person who came from that lower world mentioned that the guy who destroyed my clone had many black-colored undeads under his command. Speaking of that guy, he has the potential to become one of my generals in the future. With his good control over the space element, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become a rank 5 core evolver. Baphomet thought inwardly and his lips curled up slightly. Eldracar continued moving towards the boundless ocean, where the Tomb of the Ancient was located, and about 3 hours later, they finally reached their destination. It's been years since I last came here, Baphomet said while looking at the vast ocean in front of him. Eldracar didn't bother himself with Baphomet, instead, he focused on the small portal floating above the ocean water. After observing the portal for a while, he used his spiritual senses to scan the surrounding area and found many people keeping an eye on it. Let's go, he said to Baphomet after scanning the area. Hide your presence. I don't want anyone to know that we are entering the tomb. Hearing Eldracar, the demon nodded his head and concealed his aura. Once he concealed his aura, Eldracar once again used his void energy and entered the void space along with Baphomet. Through the void space, both of them appeared in front of the portal of the Tomb of the Ancient, and because they were inside the void space with their auras fully receded, no one was able to notice them. There are even some rank 5 core evolvers here, Baphomet suddenly said, looking around the surroundings of the portal of the tomb through the void space. They must be here because of what happened last month. Eldracar also noticed the presence of a few rank 5 core evolvers and said with a thoughtful look on his face. If I am not wrong, they must be waiting here for the tomb to close and capture the person who caused that incident inside. Hearing Eldracar mention the incident that happened last month, Baphomet's expression turned ugly as he was still pissed after knowing more than 300 demons, including Zorda, died inside the tomb. Eldracar noticed Baphomet's expressions were not good after hearing about the incident that happened in the tomb, but he did not say anything and looked back at the portal in front of him. From his core, void energy came out and entered the portal of the tomb. At the same time, a focused look appeared on Eldracar's face as if he were trying to create something. Baphomet waited calmly and looked at the large amount of void energy that Eldracar was sending inside the portal. Get ready. Around a minute later, Eldracar suddenly said in a serious voice. Baphomet's face turned serious upon hearing Eldracar, and the next second. Void phase. The portal of the tomb flashed with deep purple energy for a split second and both of them went inside. Using the void phase skill, Eldracar entered the portal of the Tomb of the Ancient along with Baphomet. The moment their bodies came into contact with the portal, void energy gushed out of Eldracar's core and the surroundings around them turned completely dark. Looking at the dark space around him, Baphomet felt as if he were moving through the void space. Although he was feeling a little strange moving through the dark space, he didn't say anything. Normally, the portal wouldn't have allowed us to enter the tomb because of the restrictions placed on it, but by creating a channel through the void plane and connecting it to the void plane of the tomb through the portal, we can enter inside, Eldracar said as both of them moved through the dark space. But try to keep your aura in check after entering the tomb because even after entering, there is a chance that its laws will expel us. Baphomet nodded his head hearing Eldracar and looked at the dark space around him with interest. It's not easy to connect the void space of Utopia with the void space of a secret realm. He thought and glanced at Eldracar with a look of surprise on his face. It seems his mastery over void energy has reached a completely different level. As they were moving through the void channel, Eldracar suddenly felt something and a deep frown appeared on his face. What's wrong? Baphomet noticed the change in Eldracar's expression and asked in a confused voice. We are about to enter the tomb's void space, but there seems to be someone in there. Eldracar said in an uncertain voice. Because he was still in the middle of Utopia and tomb's void space, he couldn't perfectly sense what was in there. Could it be a void beast? Baphomet asked upon hearing Eldracar. Void beasts are monsters that live in the void, and normally their strength ranges from rank 1 to rank 4. Only a very few void beasts can reach rank 5, and they are exceedingly rare. I am not sure, but whatever is in there is definitely quite powerful, Eldracar said in a serious voice. Hearing Eldracar, Baphomet's face also turned serious because since Eldracar said the thing inside the tomb's void space is powerful, it means the other party must be at least a rank 5 existence. Rank 5 void beasts are extremely rare. Are we really going to meet one the moment after entering the tomb? Baphomet thought with a speechless look on his face. He wasn't afraid of fighting against the void beast, but he felt their luck was really bad. Get ready, we are about to enter the void space of the tomb. Around a minute later, Eldracar said and Baphomet noticed a portal inside the dark space, not far away from them. Eldracar brought him in front of the portal and, without stopping, swiftly entered inside. The moment both of them passed through the portal. What the hell? Two shocked shouts rang out at the same time. What the hell is wrong with this void space? Eldracar asked while looking around him, his draconic eyes wide open. Similar to Eldracar, Baphomet was also shocked and looked around with a stunned expression. This is This is eldritch energy, Baphomet said in a stunned voice, feeling the heavy energy around him trying to invade his mind and body. Why is there so much eldritch energy here? Baphomet asked with narrowed eyes, unable to understand why the void space of the tomb was filled with eldritch energy. Suddenly, both of them felt someone moving towards them at a rapid speed. They turned their heads and saw a giant red octopus-like creature with hundreds of tentacles and two large green eyes at the center of its giant head coming towards them. A beginner-level rank 5 eldritch creature. Eldrakkar spoke in a low voice as his eyes narrowed. Is it the one whose presence you felt earlier? Baphomet asked while looking at the giant red octopus who was rushing towards them. Yes, Eldrakkar nodded and looked at the mass of eldritch energy that the creature was releasing. Even if there is a rank 5 eldritch creature, it is impossible for it to fill the void space with so much eldritch energy. The void dragon thought to himself, feeling that something was wrong with the void space of the tomb. Roar. Suddenly, the octopus-like eldritch creature roared loudly and shot hundreds of tentacles glowing with eldritch energy towards Eldrakkar and Baphomet. Seeing the eldritch creature attacking, Baphomet sneered and his deep red eyes gleamed like red lanterns. A small symbol of fire appeared inside his glowing eyes and he opened his mouth. Eyes of destruction, he said in a low voice, and the next second, bang, 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 the hundreds of tentacles that were about to touch Eldrakkar and Baphomet exploded into a blood mist. Roar. The eldritch creature roared in pain and tried to back away, but before it could, Eldrakkar appeared behind it without it realizing. His hands turned into sharp dragon-like claws and he pierced the giant head of the creature. Collapse. Once his sharp claw-like hand entered the creature's head, he said in a low voice, the void energy inside his body moved, and the next second, the giant head of the void creature started to swell like a balloon. Eldrakkar's draconic eyes gleamed, and through them, he saw a black hole-like thing rapidly expanding inside the creature's head. Roar. The eldritch creature roared in panic and tried to stop the black hole from expanding inside its head, but no matter what it tried, everything was useless. Around 3 seconds later, when the black hole reached 20 meters in diameter, it suddenly stopped expanding and Eldrakkar's lips curled upwards. Bang, he said in an amused voice, and the next second, boom. The black hole inside the eldritch creature's head released a powerful pressure and instantly destroyed every single internal organ inside its body. Bang, bang. With 2 small explosions, the giant green eyes of the eldritch creature exploded, and deep green liquid, mixed with its internal flesh, poured out of them like tears. Eldrakkar smirked when he saw this and withdrew his hand from the creature's head. The moment he withdrew his hand, the life force of the eldritch creature completely disappeared. I am not sure, but we can try to look for it inside the tomb, Eldrakkar said as the void energy burst forth from his body, creating a portal in the void space of the tomb. Once the portal was formed, both Eldrakkar and Baphomet receded all of their auras inside their bodies, completely erasing their presence. Let's go. I think this tomb is more mysterious than we initially thought, Eldrakkar said and took a step forward, entering the portal. Baphomet followed after Eldrakkar, and with that, both of the rank 6 core evolvers finally entered the tomb of the ancient. His second skill, Void Senses, allows him to penetrate the space barrier using his spiritual sense and send it inside the void. Lastly, his skill Void Sealing allows him to seal the power of his opponents using void energy. Although this skill is still unstable and he couldn't control it perfectly, there is no doubt that it is a very powerful skill. Before Evan used the perfect level Fire Domain Stone, he was still confused about which skill he should choose to create his skill domain. But after completely refining the perfect Fire Domain Stone and seeing the entire process of how a domain was created, Evan finally had an idea about which skill he wanted to use to create his own skill domain. Thanks for watching.